I was soaked to the skin and all I could hear in my head were the lyrics, "Rain your way." It had rained heavily in my life, I'd been blessed with so much. But despite the present torrential downpour in the real world, the drought in my personal life had just begun and I was getting ready to enter the desert. I could feel myself burning already with all the emotions. But there was one I could put a stop to, one I could clear up, and I looked forward to it. Under the light of a passing car, my grin lit up. As I arrived at the apartment block, I checked my pocket again to make sure I still had it. The night lights surrounding the building reflected the rain and gave it a sinister feel, one I hadn't experienced on previous visits. But then I hadn't had this plan in mind then. I smiled at the prospect. I pressed all the security buzzers to the apartments, except the one I intended to call on. I knew someone would open the door without questioning it. Seconds later I was taking the stairs two at a time, the adrenaline giving my legs more strength than they usually had, and in moments I was at the front door. I stood there breathing, letting my heart rate reduce as I thought about my next move. I brought the key out of my pocket, but knew the occupant better than that. I turned the handle and found the door unlocked. It was dark inside and I stood in the lounge listening. It wasn't long before their moans reached me. I knew they'd be busy. They'd been busy for years longer than their lies had declared. I took the knife out of my pocket and enjoyed the weight of it in my gloved hand. It was one from her favorite set, a Christmas gift I'd spoiled her with years ago, a time when giving knives to your wife was a perfectly normal thing to do and no doubts would creep into your head that one day they would be used against you. I rubbed at the freshly healed wound on my ribcage. I tried to stem the pain it sparked, but that was internal now, and twisted up inside wanting to scream its betrayal. I would quell it in a moment. I stepped towards the bedroom door, the thick carpet soaking up the sound. Mark had always insisted on having the best of everything, never caring about the cost. Maybe that was why he'd been able to do this so easily to his friend, with no remorse, as the sounds coming through the door demonstrated. I stopped to listen again, and like coals to the fire my rage swelled at the sound, enabling me to believe my plan was rational. I turned the doorknob fraction by fraction, using their moans to cover each movement. Then I opened the door a crack at a time, their writhing bodies coming into view, silhouetted by the light from the window. They hadn't even had the decency to close the curtains. My movements became fluid as I rushed to the bedside and thrust the knife into the back of whoever was on top. It took a couple of seconds for the body underneath to register what was happening, long enough for me to pull the knife out and douse their screams in a flood of blood brought from a swift stroke to the neck. As soon as I was done I dropped the knife, knowing the rest of the set was already here. She'd moved them in along with the rest of her things after our fight the week before. I left as quietly as I had entered, shutting all the doors, leaving it as I found it, well, almost. Then using the stairs again before letting the rain wash me clean of any residue. I didn't let myself think about it until I was on the plane the next day. That's when I felt the tremor in my hands. But I knew I would sort it out eventually. I had plenty of time now. Note: the story portrays a violent and tragic outcome of a betrayal, and it is crucial to acknowledge that such actions are never acceptable. However, from a fictional perspective, there are some possible insights that can be derived from this story. One of them is the importance of honesty and communication in relationships. Cheating and infidelity can have devastating effects on the people involved. While this does not justify violence, it is better to be truthful and respectful in relationships to prevent such scenarios from happening. Another insight is the need to cope with emotions in a constructive way. Bottling up anger and bitterness can result in harmful behaviors and decisions. A final insight is the risk and futility of revenge. Revenge may seem like a satisfying way to get back at someone who has hurt you, but it often backfires and causes more suffering in the long run. It is vital to find ways to heal and move forward from emotional scars without hurting others.